Hello all you beautiful people, 'tis I, as always, Doodleman149, and today I'll be bringing you another viewer variant video. If you're new to the series, in this video series I take a look at viewer suggested weapon builds and test them out in Core Domination, Ground War, and Warzone. In today's video, in an effort to recover from his terrible FAL build, Jughead has suggested a more well-rounded build for the SA87 light machine gun. This is definitely my least favorite light machine gun to use, so hopefully this build is usable, which it certainly looks to be. In case you forgot, or if this is your first time watching this series, here's the rating chart for how I rate viewer variants. Without further delay, let's take a look at this SA87 build from Jughead. Jughead's suggestion for an SA87 build, which I've called the Jug, features a monolithic suppressor to start as a way to keep us off the radar as well as boost this weapon's already ridiculous range. The GI Mini Reflex sight is next to allow for a nice clear sight picture due to its extremely thin frame. The CQB comb stock is next in order to improve our ADS speed at the cost of aiming stability. Stippled grip tape further boosts our ADS speed while also boosting our sprint out speed, again costing us stability. And lastly, this build is rounded off with the Commando foregrip to stabilize our recoil and our aim. To start, I'm just going to comment on the attachment choices and how they interact with the others. The monolithic suppressor boosts this weapon's 3-shot kill range by about 3.5 meters. Considering this weapon's base range is already 50 meters, I really don't think this range boost is needed. In order to supply us with this unnecessarily boosted range, this particular suppressor costs us a decent bit of ADS speed. The GI Mini Reflex is basically an all-bonus attachment, but it does still have an ADS penalty. The CQB comb stock boosts our ADS speed, directly counteracting the downsides of the monolithic suppressor, and the stippled grip tape does the same. Both of these ADS speed boosting attachments cost this build aiming stability. These stability losses are then directly counteracted by the Commando foregrip's stability boost. Do you see what I'm getting at here? It seems like every attachment is trying to play catch up with the downsides of the previous one. The monolithic suppressor's negatives are cancelled out by the CQB comb and the stippled grip, who then have their negatives cancelled out by the Commando foregrip. So if everything is negating something else, what are we really left with? Well, the suppression factor is a bonus, as is the recoil stabilization and minimal sprint out speed boost. We then have the fairly hefty movement speed loss from the Commando foregrip. So, we have a suppressed SA87 with slightly faster sprint out speed and a slower overall movement speed. Phew! Well, that was a lot to go over there, but you see my point. Using 5 attachments, we basically get the benefits from 2 and a downside from 1. Which is still positive, but just barely. That being said, this build works just fine as it is. One of my biggest issues with the SA87, aside from its poor mobility, high recoil, and lower than average ammo capacity, is its terrible iron sights. The GI Mini Reflex sight is a nice choice for an optic on this weapon, as the thin frame allows for easy target acquisition. The suppressor is nice as it lets you play a little more tactically while also giving you some leeway if you whiff a few shots, since the enemy won't be able to pinpoint your location as quickly. So for use in Domination, this build receives a 6 out of 10. Now while this rating may seem low, keep in mind my rating system. A 6 is just saying the build is slightly better than average, which it honestly is. As I pointed out before, this build isn't terribly different from a base SA87, except for an optic and suppression. Domination is probably this weapon's strongest game mode. The weapon is pretty slow, so it's better for a defensive role than it is for pushing objectives. That being said, the SA87 itself isn't a fantastic gun, so its actual practical usability is still rather low. This build is miles better than your FAL build, Jughead, so don't feel bad about this rating. Ground War is where I'll typically use LMGs for my support class, and in this mode, this build receives a 5 out of 10. The main reason why this build performs slightly worse, at least in my opinion, on Ground War is simply the engagement ranges. Now I know what you're thinking. Doodle, you made a comment before about how this weapon has great range. Well yes, dear viewer, I did. What I didn't say is that this weapon has good recoil properties. It certainly has recoil that's easy to manage, given the fact that it's all basically vertical, even without the Commando foregrip. However, when you're at longer ranges and you're looking to get that sweet 3-shot kill, You would be better suited using a lower recoil build for this weapon, as I frequently found myself only landing 2 hits before my shots were off target at longer ranges. Also, the GI Mini Reflex, while allowing for great peripheral vision, doesn't do much to boost our visual engagement range. I'll still stand by my longbow build for this gun as being the best long-range SA87 for ground war. I'll leave a link to that video down below so you can check it out later. Now, to be fair, the suppressor is handy in this mode so that you're better able to flank a battle line, given they won't be able to see on the radar as you fire at them. Speaking of enemies, a larger magazine would also serve this mode better. Basically, all the same criticisms apply to Warzone, although to a greater degree given the introduction of armor and sometimes even further engagement ranges. For Warzone, this build will get a 4 out of 10. It's usable, for sure, but there's a reason you can't think of a single time you've been killed by an SA87 in Verdansk, so think about that. And with that, the Jug SA87 build has been covered. This weapon is a little odd in terms of attachments. It doesn't really boost too many stats of the weapon, mainly because so many of the attachments work to counteract the downsides of other attachments, but that being said, I did enjoy using this build. It was different than what I would have thought to run. The small magazine and the weapon's fairly slow reload make this weapon better suited for range and defense instead of rushing on the offensive. In Domination, this weapon is probably at its best, since it has a good clean optic for mid-range fighting. In ground war, this weapon's speed can be less of an issue, but its small magazine size makes it hard to effectively squad wipe larger groups. In Warzone, this build has some strength in the stopping power, but its downsides are all ammo related. Overall, for the entirety of my testing, the Jug SA87 build earns itself a 5 out of 10. The build is fairly average overall, but it does offer something different when it comes to power over range. It's faster and reloads faster than all other LMGs with similar damage ranges, so for a faster LMG that can be used for LMG-specific challenges, this is a solid build. It certainly has its limitations in versatility, but it has its place and fills it rather well. So I'd like to give a thanks to Jughead for suggesting this build that wasn't terrible to use, and I had fun making this video. Hopefully you've all enjoyed learning about this unique viewer variant, and I would recommend giving the Jug a try. If any of you would like to see a video on a build you're interested in, feel free to comment that build down below and I'll make a note and get working on the tests. I hope you're all having a great day. I hope your week is going well too. I've been your host, Doodleman149. You've all been awesome. Never forget that, and I will see you later.